Have you ever felt like you're a magnet for the wrong kind of people? That no matter what you do, you find yourself in the same draining relationships, with the same emotional patterns, just with different faces? Carl Jung documented something that makes most psychologists deeply uncomfortable. It's this: when a true empath heals their deepest, most central wound, the people they attract into their life don't just slowly change. They change instantly. This isn't wishful thinking. This isn't self-help nonsense. This is a psychological transformation so profound and powerful that Jung himself called it terrifying. But here is the part that nobody tells you. The empath's core wound isn't what you think it is. It's not childhood trauma. It's not an abandonment wound. It's something far more fundamental to your very being. And when it finally, truly heals, the flip in your reality isn't just noticeable, it's absolute. To really wrap our heads around this incredible flip, this overnight change in who we attract, we have to start at the very beginning. We have to understand what a real empath actually is. Because in our pop culture world, we think of an empath as just being a really nice person, or a highly sensitive person who feels things deeply. But Carl Jung, he saw something completely different. He wasn't looking at surface-level kindness. In his clinical practice, he identified a specific and actually quite rare psychological profile. He had a name for it. He called it differentiated intuitive perception. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but stick with me because this is the key to everything. The people who came to Jung's clinic, the ones who embodied this trait, were often completely broken. They were the ones who walked in apologizing for taking up space. The ones who genuinely believed they were the cause of every bad thing that ever happened in their relationships. They were the silent endurers, the ones who absorbed the rage of an alcoholic parent, the infidelity of a spouse, the constant dysfunction of their family, all without a word of complaint. They were, in every sense of the word, emotional shock absorbers for everyone around them, and they were worn out, brittle, and on the verge of shattering. But Jung, being the genius that he was, didn't just see the brokenness. He looked beneath it, and what he noticed there was nothing short of groundbreaking. These people weren't just victims. That was the mask they wore, the role they'd been forced into. The truth was far more fascinating. They were psychological geniuses in hiding. Their minds, if you could peek inside, they weren't just sad diaries cataloging their pain. No, they were more like a strategist's war room. Picture maps on the wall connected by red string, detailed dossiers on every person in their life, complex charts of behavioral patterns. All of it was there, fully assembled, meticulously documented. But it was all on standby. The room was dark, waiting for a single command to activate. And Jung decided to test this. He'd bring other colleagues, other psychologists into his sessions. He wouldn't give his empath patients any background, any hints at all. He'd just introduce them. And what happened next was shocking. Within minutes, sometimes just moments of conversation, these broken patients would start reading the new person with an accuracy that stunned everyone in the room. They'd pick up on a hidden childhood trauma. They'd sense a deep professional insecurity the colleague had been hiding. They'd articulate the exact pattern of that person's failing marriage. Jung documented one specific case where a patient of his, a woman who saw herself as a worthless burden, achieved a 97% accuracy rate in reading complete strangers. She could see right through people. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't some psychic power, not in the mystical sense. This was the human brain operating at the absolute peak of its ability. It was hyper-advanced pattern recognition. While most of us are walking through the world seeing individual trees, the empath's brain is seeing the entire forest, the ecosystem, the weather patterns, and the history of the soil. all at once. They are subconsciously processing millions of data points. A micro-expression that flashes for a fraction of a second, the subtle shift in tone of voice, the specific word choice, the body language that doesn't quite match the words. Their neurological hardware is processing emotional and psychological information faster, deeper, and more accurately than anyone Jung had ever encountered. So their so-called sensitivity, it wasn't a disorder, it wasn't a malfunction or a weakness, it was the complete opposite. It was an advanced feature of human consciousness. They were running a different, more complex operating system than most of the world. The problem was they'd been told their entire lives that this advanced operating system was a virus, and that, right there, is where the core wound begins. So we arrive now at the great paradox. If this profound perception is the gift, this ability to read the hidden language of the human heart, then what precisely is the core wound? What is this foundational injury that dictates the entire tragic pattern? It is not, as one might assume, a singular trauma. It is not the shock of a parent's abandonment or the sting of childhood betrayal, though those may be its symptoms. The core wound is far more insidious, far more structural. The empath is systematically conditioned to suppress their own perception and intelligence to maintain relationships with people who cannot handle being seen clearly. You possess a kind of psychological X-ray vision. You can sense the tremor of insecurity beneath a boast, feel the chill of resentment in a warm room, and see the intricate architecture of manipulation long before the first stone is laid. You are a living lie detector, a walking emotional barometer. Your very nervous system is tuned to a frequency most cannot hear. But from your earliest days, what was the consequence of this seeing? Every time as a child you looked at your mother and said, "You seem sad," and were met with a tight smile and a, "Don't be silly, I'm fine." Every time you pointed out a glaring inconsistency in a family story and were told you're remembering it wrong. Every time you flinched from an undercurrent of anger you were told didn't exist and were scolded for being too sensitive. This is not a one-time event, it is a curriculum, a lifelong training in self-negation. Each time you accurately perceive something that the collective has agreed to ignore, you are punished. Not with a slap, but with something far more corrosive, gaslighting, with dismissal, with the steady, relentless message that your greatest gift, your ability to see truth, is in fact your greatest flaw, that to be loved, to belong, you must become less of who you are. You must pretend the emperor is clothed, and so you learn. You learn the art of self-silencing. You learn to swallow your observations, to dismiss your own intuitions as paranoia, to apologize for your clarity. You feel the sting of a cruel remark. You see the calculation behind a false kindness, and yet you force a smile and say, "It's okay." You become an accomplice in your own erasure. This internal schism is what Jung so brilliantly identified as the double consciousness. It is a psychic civil war. One part of you, the innate self, sees everything with the piercing clarity of a winter sky. It registers every data point, every flicker of emotion, every hidden agenda it knows. But the other part, the conditioned self, has learned to play the fool. It has built a wall between the perception and the conscious mind, whispering, "You're imagining things, you're causing problems, just let it go." This is the core wound. Not the external abuse, but the internal betrayal required to survive it. It is the fracture between what you know and what you are permitted to acknowledge. The empath's soul becomes a house divided, the master observer locked in the attic, while a nervous, apologetic representative lives on the ground floor, assuring all the guests that there is no one else home. This wound is a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. This void of self-trust, This desperate need to believe in the goodwill of others despite all evidence to the contrary creates a powerful gravitational pull. It attracts those who have a vested interest in your blindness. It calls out to the manipulator, the emotional vampire, the charismatic narcissist, all of whom possess a predator's instinct for someone who will see their game but be persuaded not to believe their own eyes. You become the perfect partner in a dance of delusion because you hold the map to the truth, but have been convinced it is written in a language you cannot read. The wound is not that you are broken, but that you have been forced to hide your wholeness in a world that mistakes your light for a fire that must be extinguished. And so the cycle perpetuates itself, a silent, self-consuming Ouroboros of perception and denial. The empath, trapped in the architecture of their own double consciousness, continues to absorb, to endure, to apologize. They become a master of the graceful swallow, the artful dodge, the quiet internal scream that never reaches their lips. They walk through the world feeling everything, seeing everything, and saying nothing, building a fortress of solitude within their own skin. This cannot last forever. There is a breaking point, not a slow erosion, but a seismic event. The trigger, Jung observed, is almost universally the same. A betrayal of such profound and undeniable clarity that the fragile scaffold of pretense simply cannot bear its weight. It is the discovered text message, the irrefutable lie laid bare. The moment when the hidden reality is so violently unveiled that it can no longer be explained away, minimized, or folded into the narrative of your own oversensitivity. But listen closely, for this is the most crucial nuance. It is not the betrayal itself that shatters the cycle. The pain of betrayal is a familiar country to the empath. No, what breaks the spell is the devastating, instantaneous, and totalizing realization that washes over you in that very moment. The chilling awareness that you saw it coming. It is a dam breaking. A floodgate of memory, not of emotion, but of pure, unadulterated data. You remember with photographic precision the moment 6 months ago when the energy in the room shifted for no reason you could articulate. You hear again the specific cadence of a sentence that didn't quite land true. You feel once more the intuitive hit, that gut punch of knowing you so expertly dismissed as your own paranoia, your own craziness. You see lined up in a horrifying procession every single red flag you lovingly, patiently, fearfully talked yourself out of seeing. They were not flags at all, but signposts, and you read every one correctly only to convince yourself the map was wrong. In that moment, all of it returns, not as a chaotic jumble of hurt, but with the crystalline surgical clarity of a final diagnosis. This is what Jung named the clarity event. To an outside observer, it is terrifying. It defies all expectation. The empath does not crumble. They do not weep or rage or fall apart. There is no performance of grief. Instead, something far more profound and permanent occurs within them. A fundamental reordering. A switch is thrown in the depths of their psyche, and it cannot be unthrown. They become unnervingly calm. The frantic energy of self-doubt evaporates, leaving behind a still, cool pool of certainty. They stop apologizing for their existence. They stop the exhausting labor of explaining themselves to those who have never had any intention of understanding. And then, they simply begin to speak. They speak a truth that has been waiting in the wings for a lifetime. They articulate, with a detached clinical precision, everything they have observed, cataloged, and silently endured. They reveal the patterns, the lies, the manipulations, not with the heat of anger, but with the cool focus of a surgeon identifying diseased tissue before its removal. There is no accusation in their tone, only statement. They are, for the first time, reading the report their own senses have been compiling all along. This is the moment of shadow integration. This is the alchemical process where the empath stops denying the parts of themselves they were forced to repress. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is not a place of evil. It is the repository of everything we are taught to disown. For the empath, the shadow holds their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength, their rightful anger, their capacity for boundaries. It contains all the power they had to hide to make others comfortable. In reclaiming this shadow, they do not become dark or cruel. They do not become the manipulators they have endured. To believe that is to misunderstand the process entirely. They become, quite simply, complete. The war within ends. The master observer in the attic descends the stairs and shakes hands with the representative on the ground floor. The double consciousness collapses into a single, unified, and sovereign mind. The fracture that was the core wound is fused shut, stronger than it was before. They are no longer just a person who feels, they are a person who knows, and who knows that they know. This integration is the end of the victim and the birth of something entirely new. An individual who can no longer be manipulated because they have finally chosen to believe the unassailable evidence of their own perception. The moment the very physics of your relational universe invert. It does not happen gradually with a slow and steady migration of people in and out of your life. It is instantaneous. A binary shift from one state of being to another. Why? Because your fundamental energy signature has been rewritten. You are no longer broadcasting the desperate, porous frequency of self-doubt, a signal that whispered to the world, "I see your truth, but I will gladly pretend I do not to keep you here." That signal is now silent. In its place, you emit a new, unshakable resonance, a quiet declaration that permeates the space around you. I see you clearly, and you have no power here. This new frequency operates on a level far beneath conscious interaction. Jung documented what he termed the predator instinct. The manipulator, the emotional vampire, the narcissist, they do not process this change intellectually. They feel it, viscerally, unconsciously. They are repelled by the integrated empath the way nocturnal creatures recoil from the rising sun. There is no reasoned decision to leave. There is only an instinctual, urgent retreat. The empath is not being aggressive. They are not issuing threats or ultimatums, they are simply being. Yet, to the manipulator, this new state of being is intolerable. Their entire arsenal of tactics, the guilt trips, the gaslighting, the strategic pity, now collides with a psychological force field they cannot penetrate. The words that once sparked confusion and self-recrimination now land with a dull, impotent thud and fall away. The door they once walked through at will, the door of your self-doubt, has been sealed. Not with a loud slam, but with a silent final click, and there is no argument to be had, no key to be found, because the doorway itself has ceased to exist. Simultaneously, a profound and opposite magnetic pull begins. A different species of person, one you may have felt was rare or even mythical, now feels an inexplicable sense of safety and recognition in your presence. These are the authentic, the psychologically mature, those engaged in their own growth. They are not drawn to you for what they can extract, but for what you can mutually share. They are relieved by your clarity. They seek out someone who can perceive their shadows and their light without the need to fix, judge, or enable. In your eyes, they find the rare gift of being truly seen, and in that seeing, they feel permission to be more fully themselves. Before the healing, your wound made you a perfect host for those who needed your blindness to validate their own masks. You attracted people who needed you to stay small. After the healing, your completion makes you a beacon for those who seek reality over illusion. You now attract people who value being truly seen because they have done the brave work of looking at themselves. The shift is not a gentle tide. It is a tectonic plates moving. It is the definitive, irreversible click of a switch. One moment you are living in one reality, the next you have stepped into another. The old world, with its familiar cast of characters, simply fades away not with drama but with the quiet finality of a season that has passed, making way for a new landscape to emerge, bathed in the clear, unforgiving, and utterly liberating light of truth. The most profound beauty in Jung's discovery is this: these individuals did not transform into someone new. They simply shed what was never theirs to carry, returning to the person they always were, deep beneath the layers of conditioning. Your greatest tragedy was never your sensitivity. It was the countless hours, the years spent being taught to apologize for it. Remember this: the purpose is not to see less, it is to see more wisely. The goal is not to feel less deeply. It is to choose with fierce consciousness what truly deserves that sacred depth. Your sensitivity was never a weakness. It is your most honed instrument. And the day you learn to wield it with deliberate intent is the day you step into your true power. A power that is dangerous only to those who would seek to exploit your gifts. This transformation is inevitable. The weight of the unmetabolized wound guarantees it. The only question that remains is one of agency. Will you approach this threshold consciously with courage and clarity? Or will you wait for a shattering betrayal to force you across it? If you recognize your story here, know you are not walking this path alone. This is your invitation, your summons to cease being a guest in your own life and to step into your unassailable sovereignty. To trade the chaos of reaction for the profound peace of conscious response. If this resonated, tell your story in the comments. Your experience will help someone else make sense of their own. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.